2146, that's your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. At _underscore hashtag business. This is your business economic review. KCB Group is likely going to issue a profit warning this year, with Kenya's biggest lender blaming its woes on a sharp increase in losses due to loan defaults in the wake of the coronavirus economic hardships. Now, KCB's profitability is forecast to drop by at least 25% of last year's earnings, which will be the first time in 18 years that the bank will report a fall that requires listed firms to issue a profit alert. CEO Joshua Igara already sees a little recovery happening in the fourth quarter of the year, meaning that the lender will take the 43.1% decline in a 9-month net earnings to the book. This comes at a time when the lender bagged an award as one of the most stable banks in Africa and a number one on East Africa in a survey that looked at over 2,000 financial service providers under liquidity, which they gave 10 points, growth 3 points, profitability 9, and operational efficiency 8, and soundness, they got everything 10 in that survey. All right. Let's look at what the half-year performance indicators for KCB have been there for before we introduce our panel this morning. Now, if you look at that, then you'll see that interest income as of 30 June 2019 and 30 June 2020 has been significantly hit. And this is as a result of that massive provisioning and that increase in the non-performing book. If you look at those numbers, then you'll actually see where this data is coming from, because it represents a time when the biggest worry for most of these lenders has been the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, to help us this morning paint a picture of what this means therefore for even this lower tier banks in the country, we are joined by Odhiambo Wamogi, the CEO, LM Capital. Odhiambo, how are you doing, sir?
Very fine, Simba. Good morning.
Good morning. So the question really is, do we anticipate a change of fortunes in the financial services sector in the fourth quarter? Because Oigara is saying, well, they don't anticipate any change. Things have not worked out for them. That's why they're taking this 43.1% decline in the 9 months in their earnings to the book. They don't anticipate anything to change.
Neither do I. The fourth quarter is usually characterized with a lot of shopping and perhaps tourism numbers as tourists fill in the hotels in Mombasa.
Yes.
And maybe the Tsavo.
Yes.
Tourism is not looking upward. So on the other hand, Kenyans are complaining that they do not have money in their pockets, and as such, you do not expect a lot of shopping. And so there's not much expected in the fourth quarter, especially in the coming month, for anyone to say that their fortunes will change. But just to comment on the profit warning, 25% is not small money.
Yes.
That's a lot. That's a big loss. And it feels like finally we now have a clear picture of what happened when we were all locked indoors in terms of the economy. The Kenya National Bureau of Statistics informed us that the economy shrank by 5.7% in the second quarter. That's a huge shrinking. If you consider that last year we grew at 4.9% and now we are behind by over 5%, that's huge. And so that was bound to reflect in the books of banks, because banks are sort of the barometers of how the economy is doing. And it's now reflecting. 25% is gone off KCB. You know, if it was a bank like Coop Bank, you'd probably say that it's the agricultural sector which is affected, because most of their clients are in the agricultural sector.
Yes.
But it's not Coop Bank, it's KCB,
yes,
which has a variety. Their clientele is just across the nation. It's almost everyone, from hotels to corporates to small traders to individuals. And so that should tell you just how bad we were hit by this COVID-19 thing.
All right, let's just pretty much talk about an award that KCB just won, I would say 2 weeks ago. Now, under soundness, all right, and liquidity, they got 10 points, everything. And under service providers, also in liquidity, they got 10, growth, they got 3, profitability, they got 9, and operational efficiency, 8. Those are good scores, and when we're talking about the position in East Africa, they got number 1. If number 1 is getting a 25% reduction in their profitability for the first time in 18 years, I mean, what does that mean for the smaller banks, therefore, that really don't have the asset base that KCB has?
Well, first of all, yes, I agree that KCB is the largest bank in the region. There is no competition, and there's no question about it.
Yes.
And I agree with the scoring as you've read it out. They stand out among their peers in terms of profitability, in terms of growth, in terms of liquidity, and just general stability of a bank. And so let's get something straight. Their fundamentals are still intact as a bank. Their infrastructure is in place, their resource capacity is in place, their liquidity is in place. What, however, is affected is profitability because of the temporary situation we are in, courtesy of COVID-19. And so, should the situation change, the bank will still continue to deliver the results it has been delivering for the last 18 or so years.
Yes.
And so that for me still is assuring. But moving forward to the question you asked, which is how about the other banks, the smaller banks, and where are we looking at in terms of their performance? A lot of them usually have support from the bigger banks.
Yes.
I know that what happens is they get a loan, or they get money from the bigger banks and give the smaller, and give the client, and then now they service as the loan is being serviced, they also service the loan with the bigger bank. And so some of them, some of the loan arrangements in that fashion might not be affected. But still, I expect that there will be a lot of bad news coming over towards the end of this quarter and the first quarter of next year, as we start receiving the reports from the smaller banks as well.
Interesting.
They will be affected.
Yes, interesting you say that as we wait for the first quarter of next year, probably. Are you spelling doom for even the first quarter of next year? Because everybody's talking about let's kill 2020 and get into 2021. Is that what you're saying, Ramogi, this morning?
No, there's what I call the December 31 syndrome, because most of these banks close their books on the 31st of December.
Yes.
And the reporting then begins somewhere in February or March. And so that's when you start looking at their books and you start going, oh my, oh no. Because by then the chickens will have come home to roost.
Yes.
And so yes, by March of next year we will see how ugly this thing is when we look at the books of the banks. But in terms of whether the economic catastrophe we are experiencing right now will spill over, definitely it will, because the calendar is just an idea. But strategically speaking, money is, businesses are going concern. And so it doesn't matter whether it's December 31st, it doesn't matter whether it's 2020 or 2021. It does not even recognize those numbers we call years. And so, for example, look at tourism. If the tourist numbers this year are going to underperform as we expect,
yes.
By the time we are going into January, February, some of the hotels will be saying we need to lay off staff because they really cannot afford to keep some of their staff. And so that is expected to carry on, sir. We are hopeful, but we are also sure of the realities we are in.
we'll talk to you about the sentiment that is across major markets across the world, with the likes of Moderna and Pfizer announcing that the vaccines could be more than 90% effective. Could we therefore talk about probably things coming back to normality in the second quarter of 2021? Probably.
Well, first of all, I think that's very good news. We appreciate it. But then again, for the vaccine to reach you and I,
Yes.
it is a whole process. Because then, of course, they have to ensure that they get the licensing from their regulators, wherever they are operating in. Then after that, of course, the mass production. Then now we have to talk about the financing of how our government, for example, is going to get that vaccine into this market. And then considering the fact that even COVID-19 patients are paying for their own medication, probably the government will tell us, gentlemen and ladies, you have to buy your own vaccine. Then we wonder, I mean, should I buy food, pay school fees, or buy vaccine? And you know, Kenyans, they'll probably say, Bwana atanilinda, and move on with their lives. And that probably puts us at a risk of a third wave or even a fourth one. And so we are looking at before that drug is here and probably implemented, and then we are safe. We're looking at 6 to 9 months. I don't think it's something that you'd expect here in February or March.
Pretty much. All right, let's move on to the next issue this morning as well, where we are talking about Safe Border exiting the Kenyan market and pretty much cementing their business operation all the way in Nigeria and Uganda. Now, the company that launched in Kenya 2 years ago announced plans to exit the Kenyan space by November 27th, which will immediately translate into job losses for motorcycle riders and call center operators in an economy already made tough by the pandemic hardships. Now, the company blamed the COVID-19 pandemic on the exit, but went on to explain that their Nigeria and Ugandan markets will still be in operation despite them being 1 year old. That's the question, because that's where the talking point is, because they got into that market in May. All right, now let me introduce logistics specialist, Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport, George Mbaya. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
All right, happy to have you around. And I want to ask you this question, George. Just before, by the way, I ask you that question, I'm going to look at the data of imported motorcycles into the country. So I'm going to have a talking point now for this morning. And we can actually see that all the way from 2015 to 2020, because that's the space where Safe Border is operating in. Then you could actually see that from 2016, let me talk about 2015, the general trend up to 2019 is that they have been increasing into the country. Now, George, while they have left the market, we can talk about job losses, but the reason is they're still in a market in Uganda and Nigeria where they entered in May. Why? What will read into that? Is it coronavirus or things in Kenya just weren't working?
Yeah, thank you very much, Simba. This may be complex, but I think it's a combination of factors. Could be
Yes.
a combination of factors. But you know that logistics and transport normally is the wheels, the trade rides on. We have the banks
Yes.
relying on we have Mamamboga relying on this. You have fishermen relying on this. Everyone else. Now, when you stop operations 24 hours, you slow the wheels. And when coronavirus comes, we have to carry less than we need to carry, especially passengers.
Yes.
There are two things that happen. There is inefficiency because you are not able to recoup as much as we should. And you are also slowing down the number of people moving.
Yes.
Now, in trade, if we cannot move as much as we desire, then several things happen. Your return on investment may be hit, and all that. So that is from the corona angle. There may also be internal issues that safe border as safe border in their expansionist approach in Uganda, Nigeria, and now Kenya, may be facing internally. Then there is an economic downturn across the whole world caused by COVID-19 and other factors may have contributed into them moving. But of course, by them moving, they hit our people, especially the employed and the logistics sector quite a bit.
Yes. Let me bring you in, Odhiambo Ramogi, this morning so that we can also weigh in on this as well. I mean, they're saying, look, we are exiting the Kenyan market majorly because of the disruptions of the COVID-19 pandemic. But it's not like COVID-19 pandemic was only present in Kenya, and you like to think that this is a market you've been here for 2 years, so you like to understand it better other than running to a market you've been there for less than 1 year. For you, is it coronavirus pandemic, or things are not just working in the country when it comes to border business?
Let me give you a story. In the 1960s, a few gentlemen, proprietors in Nairobi, went to Jomo Kenyatta. They were complaining about matatus.
Yes.
One of the guys who was there was, I think, the then managing director of OTC. They were saying that, why are you allowing these matatus to operate? They are taking away our business.
Yes.
And the more of them are coming up. And the president asked them, are they employing young people? And they said, yes. Then let them be. And that was the end of the conversation. And so matatus grew strategically a lot in the 70s and the 80s. And that was, of course, the beginning of the end for OTC and Kenya Bus and the likes.
Yes.
The point is, the Kenyan market is very strange. We, first of all, like cheap. We don't like expensive. Anything that is going to charge us, we do not like. Whether we are middle class or otherwise, doesn't matter. And I think that's why some of the banks tried to bring in the credit card and it didn't work. And M-Pesa came and it worked. The second thing that you need to appreciate is that, so safe border came, but there was no positioning. There was no value, strategic value that they are giving me as an end user.
Yes.
Because their pricing is almost the same as my local guy.
Yes.
The one that I have in my phone for when I'm late for a meeting and he comes with 2 helmets and I'm sorted. So why do I need to have an app in my phone for the same amount, Njoro, and Njoro will sort me out? There was no selling point for safe border, you understand?
Yes.
You see, the difference between them and the likes of Bolt and Uber is that Bolt and Uber came into the market with very low prices. And so while Njoro is awesome, at that time, you say, you know what, I'll go for Uber until Njoro behaves like Uber. And that did not happen with safe border. And so I think that's why they found it very difficult to operate in the local market. Borders were very flexible. When they saw that there's competition, they really revised their prices and beat safe border out of the market.
Yes. Oh, let me bring in Boya also this morning. Boya, we only have 2 minutes just before we take a tiny break. Just answer this first part of the question in 1 minute, then we come back and complete that thought. Yes. I mean, if you look at the imports, Boya, from 2015 up to 2019, there's been that exponential increase. I mean, it's as if everybody wants to get a border in Kenya, can get a border in Kenya. Is that the talking point? Is that why safe border could not figure and cut a place for themselves in the Kenyan market? Because, well, if you want to go private, you can, and you can make the same money as Ramogi is saying.
Yeah, it is right, because when you have more and more people participate in a sector,
yes,
the competition naturally stiffens, and innovation also comes. Innovation in pricing, innovation in service, innovation in all manner of things. That an organization that just walks in without serious thinking of the market and understanding the market may find it a little difficult. And I think this is part of the reason why they may have seen it fit to quit.
Pretty much, Mboya, hold on to that thought, because we're going to come back and your question is going to be, then how tough is the logistics market in the country? Once we come back here on Business AM, 20146 is your SMS line at Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. We are live.